I'm super excited for this masterclass because I brought in James Hepburn all the way from Melbourne, Australia. He's an expert copywriter, and today you're going to learn the 16 sales copy hacks that are going to instantly increase your conversion rates. So let's go ahead and hop into it. I want you all to know, though, before introducing James, that this guy is a complete stud. He's managed over $500,000 in ad spend, working over 12 different industries, and has helped one of the fastest growing companies in Australia break the $10 million mark. So he took them from 1 million to 10 million and all other sorts of stuff. But he's not only a great marketer, he's found his niche in copywriting. So I'm going to open up the floor for James here and let him take the show. James, how you doing, man?
Good, Austin. What's going on, man? Thanks for having me here, man. It's good to finally chat. It took us a bit of time to connect, but we got there in the end.
James, like, what are you working on lately? Actually, before we jump into what you're working on now, kind of want you to share your story, dude. So, like, how'd you get to this point?
Yeah, sure, man. I appreciate that. So, I'm 26. I went to college, or university as we call it out here, and I studied engineering and finance, actually. Nothing to do with marketing. But funnily enough, I feel like there's a lot of parallels between sort of engineering and what you do in the digital marketing space in terms of analyzing data. And even the way I write copy, I feel is very structured, very like solving a maths equation in some ways, which is a weird kind of parallel to draw, I feel. But so I was doing that. It was a 5-year degree and I was about 3 years in. I'm from Canberra, which is the capital of Australia. And I got a job, I got an internship working in Melbourne for a year at a big corporate company. And basically I hated it. I just didn't like being a number in a big organization. So I dropped out of that. Me and my brother went and bought an existing business. And over that next 2 years, that went really bad. It was probably one of the most stressful things I've ever been through. But throughout that process, we learned a lot. We made every mistake in the book, and we learned, everything about from business model to, cash flow and being somewhere with good margins and creating a unique selling proposition. And I feel like this is where I started to really hone my marketing ability. And I joined some masterminds. I had some mentors, and I never forget I was at this mastermind and this really renowned Australian copywriter got up and started talking about this thing called copy and how it was the most valuable skill you could ever learn. If you knew how to write copy, you could just print money, essentially. I wasn't necessarily drawn to it because of that. I don't feel like I'm the kind of person that's financially driven, massively, even though I do want to build wealth. It was more just that I was just captivated by that idea that you could write something that could persuade someone to take an action different to what they were going to take before they read it. I don't know if it's like a power thing, or I've always loved psychology. So I was just really fascinated by the fact that, there's ways you can do marketing, whether it's direct mail or Facebook or whatever it is that you do, that can massively influence someone for the better. I was just really captivated by the fact that was possible. And so I started going to all these guys' classes and listening to them talk. And then I started reading books Scientific Advertising by Claude Hopkins and Breakthrough Advertising by Eugene Schwartz. And I just started studying all these copywriters. I was opted into 100 different lists. I've got a pretty good memory. So I would just start to see copy, and I don't know, I just kind of developed this understanding for it because I was just so consumed by it. And I often say to people, I feel like anything you become really good at, really competent at, is a result of, obsession. And these days, if I'm on a tram in the middle of Melbourne, when it pulls up at the tram stop, I'm sticking my head out looking at billboards, to see the headline and try and figure out who it's targeting and what the hook is. You know what I mean? It's just something I'm obsessed with. So I kind of got into that. And then whilst this business we had was going bad, me and my brother launched another business that imported dance floor from China. Really random niche. My mum's a dance teacher and discovered there was this niche where you could sell dance floor in Australia for a lot cheaper than what other companies supplied it for. So I wrote my first ever long form sales copy letter as the sales letter, and literally just ran some Facebook ads to it. And we sort of went from 0 to 100 grand in about 10 months as this part-time side hustle that, we spent 5 hours a week on if you're lucky. And, without going into all of it, it probably would have happened quicker, but we just had no money and we couldn't get any stock here fast enough. And I think after that, I was like, shit, this is crazy. I just wrote this full story and I've still got it today. I still reckon it's one of the really good things I've written. And anyway, from that, I had some guys I connected with. Actually, a guy named Mitch Miller, who's how I met Rohan that we talked about before. I connected with him and I was like, hey man, I've written this letter. Can you give me some feedback? Because he was a really good copywriter. And I just remember like I was on Facebook and I sent it to him and he saw it. And he just rang me. He's like, mate, who wrote that? And I was like, oh, I did. He's like, dude, come and work for me in my agency. I need some like copywriters are hard to find. Come write some copy for me. And at the time I was pretty raw and like untrained. I was like, all right. So started writing some copy for him. Follow him on Facebook, by the way. He's a super smart marketer, really switched on guy. And yeah, man. And then just one thing sort of led to another. That was probably 3 years ago. It's 2017 now. I sort of over that period, I started picking up clients and just building my network. And then once I sold that first business that was going bad, I moved back to Melbourne because I ran that business in Sydney. And yeah, I have a big network of friends here that are marketers, people I've connected with. Not long after that, which was 25th, this was last year, actually feels like a long time ago. After that, I went and spent sort of 4 months in Canada with Rohan and traveled around North America, meeting a lot of marketers and picking up clients. And yeah, here we are today, man. I've got clients in a lot of different industries, all in the sort of high ticket coaching space. As I mentioned earlier, I'm working with a solar company. When I was with you in March, we went and filmed content with Tai Lopez, which was insane. So yeah, man, it sort of just started off as like I just think it's funny, you know what I mean? When I think of like how I got to where I'm at, I don't know if you've seen Steve Jobs gave a speech at Stanford in 2005, I think, a commencement speech, really, really famous one. And one of the things he talked about is how like you can never connect the dots looking forward. It's only when you get to the destination and you look back and you're like, shit, everything made sense and everything fell into place and everything happened as it was meant to happen to get you to where you are. But you don't know that at the time, you know what I mean? It was a pretty crazy journey, but yeah, here we are today, man. That's my story. Probably dragged on a bit, but
dude, no, yeah. That's wild. I love it, man. Check that out. Yeah, so the last time I saw James was in LA and we were both shooting some content for Tai Lopez. James, what was your content on?
So I just talked about, and I'll touch on that in a second when we get into it, just how important the concept of a promotion is, the big idea. You know, like the best example I can think of is Tim Ferriss and the book, The 4-Hour Workweek. I mean, it's a concept, you know what I mean? If he had called that, like the 4-Hour Workweek is essentially about outsourcing and delegating so you don't have to work much. If he'd called that same book Outsourcing Mastery, or, you know, how to use virtual assistants to work less, it's a lot less appealing than the 4-Hour Workweek. That's like an idea. It captures emotion. It catches your attention, and instantly you're like, oh shit, I want to know more about that. So that was what I talked about on the video. It was only a brief video. And I don't know about you, Austin, I've had a lot of people since then reach out to me on Instagram and Facebook, and it's been really interesting.
Dude, yeah, I kind of know what you mean too, because every few days or so I get a couple guys from that course saying, you know, oh, that was awesome. But yeah, James, you always over deliver. So that's why I'm excited about this masterclass here, is because I think a lot of online marketers, especially, they kind of struggle with this copywriting thing. They really focus on landing page design. They focus on videography. They focus on like making their offer cool looking, but they don't really talk about, you know, the value proposition and the way that you can use words to instill feelings, which is my interpretation of what copy is, but I'm sure you have some of your own definitions.
Yeah, totally, man. It's funny that thing you say about feelings, because one thing I've really tuned into lately is that, like, I remember the first personal development seminar I went to, they talked about how like thought becomes a feeling, which becomes an action, which becomes a result. And I agree with that. But lately I feel like one thing I feel like I've tuned into is how I almost feel like feeling comes first in some ways. And it's kind of like that chicken and egg kind of thing. You could argue that like, well, to feel something, you have to trigger a thought or whatever. But if you think about like, if you're walking down the street, or if you're in a group of friends or you're at a party or whatever, and you meet someone and you're like, oh, that guy's weird. Oh, he's a weirdo. I'm not going to talk to him. That's purely based off how interacting with that person made you feel. You know what I mean? For girls in a bar and a guy starts talking to her and she's like, this guy's weird. I'm not going to talk to him. That's pure energy exchange. That's pure feeling and emotion. You don't think like, oh, intellectually that person's weird. You're like, I don't really like the vibe I'm getting here. I'm leaving. This sound feels dangerous, doesn't feel right. I met that guy at a conference and he's a weird guy. Yeah, someone could walk up to you and say something weird, but it's also about how we communicate, you know what I mean? Most of how we communicate is non-verbal. So I would argue that if I'm deterred by someone, it's more got to do with how I feel than what I think, you know what I mean? What they say. Someone could say something really weird, but if they say it with like a warm, genuine, encompassing energy, it's going to have a different impact on me. And now you're probably thinking, what the hell has this got to do with copy? But my point is, when people read copy, what makes them bounce off a page or an ad, or they're going through an ad and they stop at a certain point, you've said something that makes them feel off, or that makes them feel like, hang on, that's not quite right. So I'll give you an example. And one of the principles I'm going to talk about in a second is what I call the principle of perhaps or maybe. And a lot of the time I see ads, because people ask me to critique their ads and sales letters all the time, and people will write stuff like, say you're in targeting people that need to lose weight. You might have a headline, and then just into the ad, people will say things like, oh, you feel like shit, you've got no energy, you know that you want to lose weight so that you feel better about yourself, but you don't know how to. And by instantly telling someone, like, you feel like this, you are like that, you need to do this, the first instant reaction for most people is like, fuck off, like, I don't need to do anything. You don't know me. So instead of saying to someone, you need to be like this, you feel like that, you should be like, perhaps you feel like, you don't have as much energy as you used to. Maybe you would like to, lose some weight so you look better. So instead of like forcefully telling people how they are, you're suggesting, that perhaps, maybe, you're in this situation. Now that might sound kind of intellectual, but the difference is, instead of me pushing it onto you and saying like, you feel like this, you're in this predicament, your business is making no money, you'd love to be able to generate more leads. And then someone goes, no, I don't. I feel like, what would this guy know about me, and bouncing off the ad. Instead, they feel like they might either go, oh, yeah, maybe. Oh, yeah, sometimes I do feel like that. Or they might go, I don't really feel like that, but you're not forcing it onto them. So they feel more like that they can continue reading. Does that make sense? Instead of like telling people how they are in the world, it's like suggesting maybe you're like this, perhaps you're like that, but maybe you're not. Anyway, keep moving. And it's trying to like massage that feeling and emotion it brings out, rather than, trigger someone to go, oh, yeah, this guy doesn't know me, and leave the page.
Yeah, I love that. So early in the training, and you're already dropping gold, bro. I think I've used it mostly in the beginning for declaring like who I'm trying to talk to. So maybe you're a struggling online entrepreneur, or maybe you're somebody that just wants more clients and you already have a base. But I'm using that to segment who I'm talking to. Up front is often where I say that, so they know whether or not they should continue reading. I want to have it almost as a qualifier.
Yeah, totally. And like there is different, contexts where you can use that kind of thing. And obviously to some extent you need to be direct, but I feel like just as a general rule, especially if you're going out to cold traffic, you want to just like lightly suggest things like, oh, maybe you're in this bucket, perhaps you're in that situation, or, there's other circumstances where you can use similar words. But it all comes back to, as I was saying, I got on a tangent there, but how you make people feel. And that's why lately I've been debating, does the thought or the feeling come first? Because I feel like we're very, we're all just energy. And I feel like we're very intuitive characters, and we just judge a lot on how things make us feel. And, everyone's read an ad, they've been like, oh, this is totally hypey and unbelievable. Again, it's not generally that you think it's hypey. You just feel that like, yeah, this is a bit unrealistic.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, a lot of that has to do with claims. How do you ever use claims in your copy? And maybe you're going to get to that later.
Yeah, I talk to clients about this all the time. How I believe, a lot of clients are like, it's like I work with the people in the property industry, and they're like, oh, I acquired like 18 properties by the time I was 28, and my portfolio is worth $8 million. And I'm like, man, that's awesome. But like, you got to think, for the average person, they're going to look at you and think you're different. You have something they don't have. Like, that's too unrealistic, because it's such a 1% or even less, 0.01% result. So you got to use claims in a way that it's exciting and new and fashionable, but it's still realistic and believable. I think I was talking to someone last night. One of my good friends had a birthday here, and a guy I met there was saying to me how Ryan Levesque, who invented the survey funnel and the ask method, talks about how you should make your claims as good as you can, come up with your claim, but then take a step back from that. Just one step back to distance yourself. And I think that's a really smart way of doing it. But we'll get into all of that stuff, man, very soon.
Yeah, I got Ryan Levesque's book right here. It's called just Ask.
Yeah. Great book. I can see it there too. Yeah, you do.
Awesome. So James, you want to kind of hop on in here and start talking about the high level strategy, and then we'll get into some of the tactics here soon.
So I just touched on a couple of tactics, but yeah, I'm gonna say some things that are probably somewhat controversial when it comes to higher level stuff, but they're just what I believe in my experience. And the first person I'm gonna point the gun at is Russell Brunson. And I'm a massive Brunson fan, just for the record, and this is in no way hate. I think he's an incredibly smart guy. And as far as the internet marketing space goes, which has some questionable characters, he's a guy of really high integrity, and I actually really love his stuff. And this is kind of like a two-sided thing because he's done an incredible job of this, and that's what's helped him build a big. I consider ClickFunnels to be like a cult, which is cool because it's awesome. I love ClickFunnels. But one thing he's done really well, and this is like a copy principle in itself, you need a unique mechanism in a lot of promotions to like have someone consider what, for example, like when you were doing the Atlas thing, it's like, what makes us unique? Why would someone shop with me and not my competitor? And one thing Brunson's done incredibly well is he's convinced his whole audience and his cult and all the ClickFunnels followers that the thing you need is a funnel. Like, you're only one funnel away. The reason you're not successful is because you don't have a funnel. And to some extent, it's not wrong, but the issue I have with it is that I feel like in the internet marketing space, far too many people are obsessed with the funnel, Facebook, the ad platform, all of these kind of things, which in reality, they have their merits. But for me, it's all about the basics. I have this saying, principles over platforms. Understand the principles of human psychology, irrespective of the platforms. For a while now, I've had this video I've been going to film. I just haven't really created a lot of content recently. It's pretty controversial. I've got to do it. And the headline is why I don't give a fuck about messenger bots. A lot of people have been asking me about messenger bots lately, which I think are a really incredible tool. But I don't care about them because regardless of the platform, you're still selling to humans and you still need to understand human psychology. And I feel like, as marketers, we get whatever advantage we can to sell the things that we got to sell, to push our product or our agenda or our service. I understand that. But a lot of people get caught up in the platform, whether it's Facebook, or Google, YouTube, messenger bots, Snapchat, Instagram, all that sort of stuff. When it's people that you're selling to, the human brain has hardly changed in the last 40,000 years. So you're still, you're better off understanding those, psychological principles. I mean, I'm talking to a guy last year who said to me, "Oh, James, what's your thoughts on the future, futurism and AI and VR and all this sort of stuff?" And I said, "I don't know, but what I do know is if you can write ads, you never have a problem." Now, I mean, there's AI out there that's creating copy and ads. I'll probably be wrong at some point, but I fundamentally believe understanding psychology and understanding people is what will always matter, and it's something that I spend a lot of time trying to drill into people. The platform's cool. Facebook, my whole business runs on Facebook, and I use all of these different things, but you're still selling to people. You still need to understand direct response marketing. You need to understand psychology. So when I talk about the principles, I mean understanding their wants, understanding their fears, their desires, their dreams. Who are we actually targeting? Last week, I spent all of last week, because like I said, I do work in the property space. All I did was some cold LinkedIn, cold email. And actually on that topic, I was watching your masterclass with Mike on the cold email one. So if anyone's watching this, go watch that. That was awesome. I actually used parts of that email, and I sent out about 45 emails, and I got about 7 calls, which was a pretty crazy response rate. But it all came back to the fact that I was targeting a very specific niche in the property segment. I put together a case study that directly responded to these business owners. I followed that proven funnel that you mapped out on that masterclass. But again, I understood the person. I had a really targeted niche. I knew what they wanted. I knew what their challenges were. And so then when I sent this email, to send 45 cold emails with no rapport built, no one even knows who you are, and to get probably 10 to 12 responses, but I think we got on the phone with about 7 people. That's a pretty high response rate for doing cold, you know what I mean? That's a better rate than some people are getting out of Facebook. But again, because I understood the market, I had a good segment. I spent a lot of time researching and finding the right people and making sure the email was going to the right decision maker. So, I'm just massive on the principles. Like I said, love Brunson, but when I was at the Funnel Hacker Live event in Dallas, I found a lot of people that were like, "Oh, the funnel, we're going to do this funnel, that funnel." And the funnel matters. But if you don't have that big idea, that 4-hour work week kind of concept, if you don't have an understanding of your market and then a marketing message that directly corresponds to their fears and desires and wants and dreams, you're going nowhere, in my opinion. It doesn't matter whether it's a webinar or a VSL kind of funnel, or you've got a, what are the other funnels? I can't even think of any at the moment. Whatever you're doing, really doesn't matter. And it also doesn't matter what you're selling if you don't have that offer that people want and you're not communicating to them well. And again, that comes back to creating an irresistible offer. What do they actually want? Give them what they want. Because, if you think about, like when the new iPhone comes out or when the iPod was released, that was such like a hot thing. People will camp out for like a week just to be the first person to get one. Apple have those like raving fans, brand evangelists that will do anything to get their product because they perceive it as a hot offer, you know what I mean? So I feel like understanding these things, like putting together a good offer, something that people want, it's just more important than funnels and that sort of thing. And that's why if anyone's watching that was at Funnel Hacking Live, Todd Brown did a talk about how to develop the big idea for any promotion. So the big idea is just the concept behind it. It's like when Apple released the iPod, 1,000 songs in your pocket. Didn't really know what an iPod was at the time, but the concept of having 1,000 songs in your pocket was crazy. What's the idea behind your promotion? Todd Brown talked about the big idea and he gave some crazy examples. And it was probably one of the most insightful talks I've ever seen. I felt like it was going over the head of some people, but I was like standing at the back of the room like a kid in a candy shop, like really excited because I just think that's the most important thing. And the thing about understanding that big idea or that concept is that once you are aware of it and once you've developed it well, it doesn't matter what platform you're on. It doesn't matter if you're on Facebook or YouTube or Google or, if you walk down the street and see someone. If you have a hot offer and you're talking to the right segment of the market, you're going to go well. So that's the platform for where everything I speak about comes from. I think I'm kind of biased in a sense because I am a copywriter, you know what I mean? I'm not like a hardcore funnel metrics kind of person. But, from every campaign I've ever launched, the ones that go incredibly well versus the ones that don't are the ones that have that big idea, that concept, that headline that really captures the imagination of the market that you're targeting.
Yeah. I think Russell's a funny guy because, if you guys don't know his story, he grew up being obsessed with junk mail and studying, direct mail that was long form sales letters and everything that you see on the internet except delivered to your door. And really all he talks about now as far as copy goes, even though that was like growing up, like his thing that he studied most is, I know he just tried to templatize it, but basically give them what they want and then tell them exactly what they don't want. And those are the only two things that he uses for his headlines. So how to make $10,000 without using ad spend, or something like that.
Yeah. And actually, that is a really good point. I didn't say about Brunson. He's a genius when it comes to copy. Like his promotions and his stuff and his sales letters. If you buy his book, there'll always be like a sales letter to upsell stuff. His copy and what he's built is incredible. Dude's one of the smartest marketers you'd meet. He's just done a good job of convincing everyone they need a funnel, which makes sense because then they buy ClickFunnels, you know what I mean? So, and again, they do need a funnel. You do need a good strategy. I just think the funnel's nothing without, if you could either have insane copy or like campaign concept versus an insane funnel, you're going to take the concept any day of the week because you can walk out in the street and explain your offer and your concept to someone and they will want to buy it just based on that alone. So, yeah, Brunson's insane. I remember someone told me, I can't remember exactly the figures, but like, even though he's an online guy, for like every dollar he makes online, he makes like $60 offline. Like I remember when he had that Neurocell funnel. I wouldn't put myself on record as quote as that, even though I just have. But like whatever it was, he was making an insane amount with like direct mail and offline strategies, especially when he had that Neurocell supplement funnel. I don't know if you remember that one. So it's fascinating stuff. But yeah, he's an incredibly switched on guy.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I was actually just in Boise this weekend, and he wasn't there, but went past the ClickFunnels thing. It's so funny though. Here's why I think that maybe they are kind of ignoring copywriting, and that is because they're like the tech side. So like they're ignoring even design. I think that lead pages or Insta page has a better look. And even ClickFunnels, like they don't put any effort into the design of the pages. They just want to be about the tech on the back end. So they're selling everybody on themselves by representing that you only need a good tech. Maybe they're just trying to be a living example. Do either James or I both think that? No, because like I think so much into design. Like I personally focus on design more than anything else, more than the copy, more than the tech. And I think James here, he focuses more on the copy than he does the design and the tech. And maybe Russell focuses more on the tech than the copy and design. So I think as we look at this, like as a well-rounded marketer's view, it's good that you're watching this masterclass to get an inside perspective of copy. And then you can watch my masterclass on the inside of the design. And then there's other guys that will talk about tech. But this is going to be your best video, best masterclass to hear about the copy and to become a well-rounded marketer.
Yeah. So it's an interesting thing. Like, it's funny you say that about design, because if I'm ever working on, like I did an online summit last year with a guy and we did all the copy and funnels for that. And, even any project, if I'm ever working on anything relatively upmarket, you always need a designer to come in and edit your ClickFunnels pages. So I do agree with that. I wouldn't say he ignores design or copy, but yeah, you are right. Like there's a different level of focus. But yeah, look, I mean, it's marketing at the end of the day. His unique mechanism is that you need a funnel. That's the thing he sells everyone on. And yeah, it's just interesting. You know what I mean? It's so to me, I'm just a copy person, because I feel like if you understand copy and psychology realistically, like in the same way I love copy and marketing, I'm very passionate about the dating space, relationships, anything. I just think the human mind is incredible, and all of these things are about how do you practically understand how the mind works so you can, do hopefully good things with it.
Yeah. And speaking of on the human mind and like our personality types on how we look at things as marketers' lens, there's three kinds of people in the world. There's kinesthetic, auditory, and visual. And so they all experience the world and they all do actions in a certain way. So when you talk to somebody about a concert, they'll say either one of three things. Oh my God, the lights were amazing. And, the band looks so cool up there on stage, very visual. Oh my God, it sounded so amazing. Like this band was just so talented and musical, auditory. And then the energy there, the vibrations, the drugs are awesome. Very, very emotional people, right? Like they talk about feeling good all the time, the energy around it. And so when you interact with people, they'll either say it looks good, it feels good, or it sounds good. And that's the lens that they're looking at things through. And so I'm having an inclination to say that that's how us three are as marketers. It looks good, it sounds good, or it feels good when we pertain to the way we do marketing.
And that comes back to language patterns as well. I've noticed I often say to people, I feel like this, or I understand what you're saying. That makes me feel like, I sort of associate more with being a visual person. I like to see things in my head before I do them, but I do language-wise say the word feel as opposed to saying I hear what you're saying, I see what you're saying, I feel what you're saying, you know what I mean? So yeah, man, they're all interesting as well.
Yeah, awesome. Well, let's go ahead and dive into some of the things you prepared for us.
Awesome, man. So yeah, I feel like I've talked a lot of high-level strategy at this point in time, and just sort of setting a background, like I said, because a lot of this stuff goes into the nitty-gritty. Like before, when I was talking about perhaps versus maybe, that's like, whoa, that just went insanely, detailed really quickly. So I just want to set that sort of background. But yeah, I've got 16 things. 16 things here I want to go through. There's like a list more, and I'm running a webinar soon about that. But I just want to try and, in the interest of not making this go for 2 hours, I'll talk about this stuff all day. So I'm going to start going through them now. They're in no particular order. I mean, I reordered them this morning before I went through them, because some are sort of more conceptual and some are like instant low-level detail. But yeah, they're in no specific order in that sense. So the first one I'm going to talk about is, and this is an awesome thing to do when you're writing your ads. I feel like I've given this advice to people when they're like, wow, that sort of changed my perception. When you're writing an ad, probably an ad more so than a sales letter, but you can do this for the start of a sales letter, or if in little bits you're struggling to get that flow and you feel like, I'm just not articulating what I'm saying well. What I do is speak the ad. So get an app, get like a voice recording app on your phone and just speak it. Because I've spoken at conferences in like Switzerland and Thailand and in Australia and travel around a bit, and I'll give live demonstrations of ads and stuff, and I film video scripts, and it always follows the same formula. I sort of know when I speak it out how it should sound. But I find if you just speak the ad and then get that transcribed or transcribe it yourself, it's a really quick way to make your ads flow better. And the reason is because copywriting is just salesmanship in print. I feel like everyone's heard that expression, but maybe not explored it. It's a thing Claude Hopkins talked about in Scientific Advertising, book that came out in like 1920 or something. A really good book. It's just salesmanship in print, and salesmanship is the spoken word. You know what I mean? It's two people conversing about a sales, to sell a product or service. So it makes sense when we go to write copy. Why would we write it? You know what I mean? Speak it, because it's salesmanship in print. It's the spoken word in print. So that's my first tip. And one thing that I feel like most people struggle with, like I know when I first started writing copy, I struggled with this big time. If you've been to college or you're university educated, you're at a big disadvantage. I know that when I went to university, I was hanging out with all these people with like 130 plus IQs, probably smarter than that, and they were always using these big words, and I'd be reading all these textbooks, and your vocabulary starts to develop to like a really advanced level because you're hanging out with all these smart people all the time. But in reality, it's sort of like it's counterintuitive, or it's not helping you copy because you need really simple, dumbed down words. Because most people they did like a test, and most people in our population read and write at like an 8th grader level. So with that in mind, you need to write your stuff simple and dumb down for people if you want the masses to sort of understand it, not use big convoluted words. So when I first started writing copy, I spent ages trying to stop using big words because it's been a habit I developed while I was at university. But yeah, a way to get out of that is speak the ad, because I feel like there's two different ways. You either have that written academic way of writing or communicating, and then when you speak, think about the words you use, like your and and you're more casual, and maybe you swear and you say this and that, but you wouldn't do any of those things when you write. But in reality, when you want someone to read your ad, you want them to do a lot of those things. Like you want them to like read it and feel like you're there speaking it to them. You know what I mean? As soon as they read something that's like academically written, I feel like too many people try to be professional in their copy, whereas I just try to be sort of raw and write how I would speak. And that's like how I think of it in my head. I'm like, oh, hey, would you do this? Would you do that? I feel like if you write an ad and then you go to speak it and it doesn't feel like something you should say, then you should change it. And a good way to do that is just speak it before you write it and then edit it. So that's like the first thing I say to people, because I feel like that is it's a real helpful one.
Dude, that one is so helpful. And I want you guys to know that one lesson actually does go past just copy. So this is the same lesson I've heard when I talk to expert video salesmen. When they create an engaging video, they say, if you're going to write a script and you put it on the teleprompter, make sure to also upload the ums and ahs to the teleprompter, because you'll just come off as a robot. And that's not the way you want to go to. And then there's also, don't get all technical. Whenever you're doing even a consultation in person, you don't want to overwhelm them with jargon. That's one of the easiest ways to get them to, kind of doze off or, lose attention, is that they are just kind of confused. And that jargon does confuse them. So it's just an overall sales lesson. But obviously, I like your lens in copywriting.
And it's funny you say that about uploading the ums and ahs to the teleprompter, because if you think about it when you're talking to people, think about the last conversation you had with someone. How many times did they or you and ah? You don't even know. You know what I mean? Because you don't listen to it. You're just kind of used to hearing it. And if someone ums and ahs, you don't even dwell on it. Like I dwell on it so little, I haven't thought of it at all in my life until you just mentioned it then, like uploading it to a teleprompter. You're like, it sounds crazy, but we never focus on that stuff. You know what I mean? So people aren't even aware that they're doing it anyway. And that's the same, like you said, in videos. You're recording a video. You don't want to and ah and stutter all over the shop, but you want to keep that authenticity.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. All right. So let's go on. Lesson number 2.
The next principle, this is more high level. It's the concept that everyone wants things fast, quick, and easy. And, we talk about it in marketing a lot, but everyone's looking for that magic bullet. And that's just the reality. So it's funny, like when I first got into copywriting, I remember the first event I went to and the guy was talking about headlines and some of the stuff he was saying. I just remember thinking like, man, this shit seems like pretty unethical. Like some of the stuff they're saying, like that's not realistic. That's not realistic. And it's funny, like over time, I've become a drug addict because I don't really see a problem with any of it anymore because I've just written so much of it. So you need to still maintain that ethical barrier. But the reality is people want things fast, quick and easy. If you look at like the fitness health industry is a good example. Even though there's a lot of examples of things that I would consider to be unethical in terms of products people sell, no one wants to hear how to, lose 20 pounds in, 6 months. They want to do it now. So you need to balance that, maintaining like sort of some ethical integrity. You need to balance that out. But you just need to, I suppose, when you're right, you need to come from that concept of like fast, quick and easy. And because that's what people want. And we want things now. I'm no different. We want to make money now. We don't want to wait. We don't want to invest for 20 years and build a portfolio. We want to make money now. And a good example of that is I had a client in the property space and the headline we went with was like how to build a $4 million portfolio in 10 years. And it didn't go very well. It went all right. He was a fairly conservative guy. So I didn't, you got to do what the client wants to do to some respects. But I kind of felt like it's too safe. It sounds like, 4 million in 10 years. It's not that exciting. And, again, you don't want to have that get rich quick kind of stuff, but you need to find that balance between something that's realistic and believable and honest and something that entices people or gets them in. Sometimes I find in copy, it's the things you leave out that are more important than, instead of saying 4 million in 10 years, you could just say how to build a $4 million portfolio. You know what I mean? And then maybe somewhere in your sales video, your VSL, because it was just like a landing page VSL funnel, you talk about the time frame. But initially, you're just trying to hook people in based on the outcome they want. So you know what I mean? It's striking that balance. Because if you're like, oh, yeah, man, you're going to be a millionaire, it's just going to take you 20 years. Everyone's like, I'm not interested in that. But if you're like, here's how you become a millionaire, and then later down the track, when you outlay the content, you sort of explain the process. You know what I mean? It has a different effect. So it's coming from that mindset of understanding that we all want things now. We all want instant gratification. We all want things fast, quick, and easy. We want to be rich, quick. We want to be in the best body shape. We don't want to spend 5 years lifting weights and eating broccoli and chicken every day to get the body we want.
Yeah.
And so it's coming from that mindset. Because I feel like, again, I've given some examples there, like money and health that are, you can't really lie about them because they take time. But I've seen people write ads in other markets and I've been like, yeah, you're making this sound like it's harder than it is. Like, for example, it's a perfect example. I was on a sales call last week with a guy I'm working with. He lives in Perth, which is like west coast of Australia. And we were speaking to a guy in New Zealand who runs an insurance company. And I send people like a 30 sort of question survey before I work with them, just so I can understand their business, do a consult with them. It was kind of an idea this guy in Perth I was working with came up with. Anyway, we get on this call. We're just chatting to this guy. We only chatted for probably 20 minutes. We didn't make a lot of progress. We got a bit of an understanding about him. And the other guy ran the call because he's like a sales guy. And he says to this guy, he's like, Scott, I'll send you through our like online survey tool. He goes, it's really in depth and it'll take you like 2 hours to fill it out. But it'll give you all this information. Anyway, that was last Tuesday. It's Thursday here. I still haven't got it back from him. After we got off the call, I rang the guy in Perth. I said, mate, what are you doing? And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, the information's useful, but you've just thrown like a 2-hour roadblock at that guy. And he's still telling us he's going to respond to it. We're just still waiting for it, you know what I mean? But again, because it doesn't seem easy. Now, you don't want to say like to someone, it's going to take you 15 minutes if it's going to take you 2 hours. So I said to him, I'm like, going forward, we need to take some questions out in the initial phase because we haven't built a massive amount of rapport. We haven't built a lot of trust. We haven't got a lot of buy-in from him. We've just had a brief chat. It's going good. It's on the right path. But then you've thrown this big roadblock in front of him. He has a business with all these staff and multi-7-figure and all this sort of stuff. And it's just a really good example. He's probably thinking to himself, 2 hours, like I've got a business, I've got all this stuff to do. I don't need to do that. Fast, quick and easy.
Yeah. That's awesome. One of my best performing ads right now is promoting one of our other masterclasses with J.R. Rivas. It's how to scale your agency to 10K in 45 days. And it is literally a step-by-step process of how he does paid ads. And here's the videos, here's the copy, here's the images to use. And it's like really, easy to duplicate because he just gives you the templates. But it's one of the best performing ads right now. I think one, because like the way I structured the video is pretty interesting. It's a vertical video. But two is like the title of it is 10K in 45 days. And I purposely left out like a lot of like the strategy of exactly how in the copy, because it's explained a little bit in the video. But I was thinking about it in the form of the way it kind of reminds me of the Tao. I've been listening to a lot of Wayne Dyer recently. He says the power in music is the space between the notes, and the power in the zoo is the space between the bars. That's where the tiger lies. And it makes me think about that. It's often our pauses and the way that we structure our sentences on video and in copy. The power is when we pause. Instead of saying the power is when we pause, the power is when we pause. And it's like the way you structure things and the way that you write things in the spacing between them is really how you structure the way it talks in their head, and then ultimately the way they feel on the inside.
Totally. Yeah, it's really interesting that, like, if you look in like the sort of dating space, I know like I had a client that was a dating coach, and we did like a $40,000 revenue from an event he ran that went really well. And he used to talk about how, like, in that seduction process, like, if you want to create tension, you need to slow down how you speak, and you need to leave pauses. You know what I mean? And like when you do it, it's like, whoa, fuck, you can feel that. And I remember I was speaking in Switzerland a few weeks ago, and I didn't do this intentionally. It was only afterwards I kind of looked back. I was given an example of how this one guy, one of the clients at this program, had written an ad, which was kind of just like fairly vague and not descriptive, and then how I would write the ad encompassing all of this avatars, like wants and fears and desires and stuff. And when I went to explain how I would write it, I just spoke it off the top of my head. But for some reason I was like, so guys, yeah, he wrote the ad like this, he did that, but then this is what he should have done. And I sort of like looked down, and unintentionally I just spoke softer and like slower and said all these like emotional things about, oh, his parents felt like this and he was worried because his grandparents thought this. And I could tell like it had this big effect. Everyone's like, oh, that was really cool. But later on I was like, the fact that I just slowed right down there, had all those pauses, probably spoke with like a deeper thing, that had like massively affected how what I said was perceived. So it's the same kind of concept.
Dude, I love it, man. We're getting deep here.
It's interesting, that stuff. And yeah, if you're on video and you're like, I'm going to tell you the one thing you need to do to scale your agency to 10K in 45 days, which, by the way, for anyone watching, that's an awesome headline. I'll probably go and watch that at some point. But if you're, going to say, I'll tell you the one thing, and here's the thing. When you quieten down and you go to say it, because when you speak quiet, everyone sort of like looks in to go and listen to it. You know what I mean?
I think I naturally just did that. I just kind of scooted out at the edge of my chair.
Like, it's the one thing. It's the one thing. And actually, the funny thing about that is, man, that's sort of principle number 3, specificity. Keeping things specific. There's just one thing you need to know to get your agency to 10K in 45 days. Everyone's like, oh, what is it? Like for the webinar, I'm running a webinar, so I'm not pitching anything from it. I'm just going to talk about similar concepts to this, plus a bunch more, because I'll have more time. And the first bullet point is the one word you should never use in your copy. And I'm going to talk about that, actually. That's the 5th principle. I'll talk about that in a second. But you know what I mean? It's like that one thing, and instantly everyone's like, shit, what is it? I want to know what it is. And that comes from principle 3, which is being specific. So whether it's the one thing you need to know, the 3-step sales formula, the, how I lost X amount of weight in 21 days, putting time frames on things, specific things, how I made, you'll see people run headlines like how I made $2,709.51. People will put specific dollar amounts, all that sort of stuff. It's like, it's not like, oh, how I made 10K in 45 days works, but it's not like that. It's like, it's how I made this specific thing happen. And that specificity is really powerful. Whereas if you're like, make money online versus how I scale my agency to agency 10K, 45 days, it's like, one, it's speaking to a more specific avatar, which is marketers, people like myself, people that run agencies that want to do stuff. And 2, it's, how I got there in a specific time frame. Makes the future real in a sense. This amount of money, this time frame, I'll show you how.
Yeah,
okay, cool.
That it's just like what Dave Rogenmoser did a few days ago for the Proof webinar, right? It was like how this one psychology tip, how this one psychology trick ended up making us $18,929.48. And he's talking about proof, obviously, of using social proof.
Yeah. Dave does some good copy. And when I was hanging out with you guys, so before I met you, Austin, in San Diego in February, I was in San Francisco when Dave and Chris and JP were there for SaaStr. And one of my mates was at SaaStr, and I was there with some other Aussie marketers. And we were all hanging out. It was the first time I met Dave. I think we'd Skyped once, and we had a couple of chats online. And I was saying to him, I was like, man, it's refreshing. Like, I reckon you're the first, maybe not the first person I've met, but one of the few people I've met that, like, he is in real life exactly how he promotes himself on the internet. Like, if anything, he's like even nicer in real life. You know what I mean? But like, there was such congruency there. We talked about headlines and we laughed about proof and we had a good time. But he has some awesome copy, and that's a really good example of it.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. I think I maybe had cut you off, so I'm sorry about that. But yeah, okay. So being really specific in your copy, it's really important.
Yeah. Have a specific outcome in a specific time frame. That stuff's going to work so much better. There's countless examples of it. Again, even the 4-hour work week, it's 4 hours of work as opposed to being like, the short work week or something like that. Sounds obvious, but it makes a really big difference. Number 4 is the use of open loops. This is a really powerful psychology. If you ever watched a video sales letter or VSL, you know exactly what I mean. But a good example of that is like I just said before, I'm going to talk about the one word you should never use in your copy. And everyone's like, what is it? Tell me what it is. It's like if you go up to someone and you say something like, and you might not even do this intentionally. In fact, I did it to a guy last night. I was at this dinner for my friend's 25th and we were all hanging out. And this one guy rocked up late and he was sitting at the other end of the table and I haven't seen him for a while. And just at the end, he was walking out. I'm like, oh, Jake. I'm like, man, I got to chat to you. There's one thing I want to speak to you about, but you're walking out. I'm leaving. I'll come see you soon. He was like, oh, okay, cool, man. And as I walked off, I'm thinking, in his head, he's now going to be trying to figure out what the one thing was. I didn't even mean to do it to him. You know what I mean? But that's the whole concept of an open loop. It's like you open that idea in someone's mind, but you don't close it until later on in the sales piece. And again, all of these principles transfer across into daily life. If you text your girlfriend and say, hey, we need to chat. Oh, like, hey, I need to talk to you. I'll ring you tonight. And it's like 10 a.m. in the morning. All day, she's going to be thinking about what that thing is. And obviously you shouldn't do it in that context. It's probably a bit of psychological portion. But in your copy, if you say to someone like, I'm going to tell you the one thing you need to do to scale your agency to 10K in 45 days. But before I do, let me tell you my story. Now they're like thinking, oh, damn, I want to know what that one thing is. But they're like staying engaged in your copy. So it gives people a reason to stay. Like, I'm going to show you.
Does this so much, dude.
Yeah. Some people overuse it. And again, I find with copy, especially as things develop, I was talking to a copywriter a couple of days ago about, he's been in the game for like 20 years. I said, how do you think things changed? He goes, the market hasn't changed, but the marketplace has changed because there's all these different options. We were talking about like hypey copy. Do you reckon it still works? And some people use it too much. Some people open like 3 or 4 loops in the sales piece, never close them, or, just tease people. I feel like you have to strike a balance so that you build credibility, because you might open a loop and you can open another one, but then you're going to want to close that first one. So a good example of an open loop is like, what's the one thing? I'm going to tell you something. It's more about saying something like, I'm going to tell you something, but I'll tell you later. I'd say like that's how I would define an open loop. There's a lot of different places where you can use it. It's even like if you meet someone and you're like, oh, like something about, like say you see an old friend you haven't seen in a while, you're like, oh, something about you seems different. I just don't know what it is. Like, similar kind of stuff. And like, you might not even mean to do it. They're like, oh, what is it? You want to know what it is, but you might not know. They might look different. They might just have a different energy about them. But yeah, say the reason that's powerful in copy is because it keeps people's attention. So at the start of an ad, I'll normally, there's certain ads I might write where I might have a big curiosity invoking headline that tells a story, how I went from, perfect example, how I, just, not that I don't know J.R. Reeves, just for the record, but say he was like, I don't know, a college dropout. How a college dropout went from, like working at McDonald's to building a 10K a month agency in 45 days. That might be the headline I'd use. And then I would open an ad that was like, hey, I'm J.R. Reeves. I'm an entrepreneur, a digital marketer, and an agency owner. But I'll tell you more about that in just a second. Before I do, I want to tell you my story. You know what I mean? Or something like that. That's a softer kind of one, because you're not saying like, I'm going to tell you the 3 things you need to do to build your agency, but more on that in just a second. And then instantly people are like, oh, okay, cool, I'm going to learn more about that. And then you've still got their attention as they go through the ad or the sales letter. Now, why that's important is because there's an expression: the more they read, the more they buy. Being able to keep someone's focus and attention for a more extended period of time, generally speaking, and again, this is a generalization, generally tends to increase conversion because they're consumed in your world. They're thinking about you. They're finding a match in their mind for your product and them. And, it just builds things. And it adds more value. It creates more of a relationship. I tend to write long ads in the newsfeed, 800 to 1,200 words, simply because it builds that relationship and it adds a lot of value without someone having to exit Facebook, and it starts to build trust in things before you make them an offer on a landing page.
I love it, man. Yeah, definitely. I try and use it as much as I can in all my video ads. As I always start off, because it increases watch time. Like I'm kind of analytical in that, like a nerd. I want to see, like, by saying this one sentence, it has increased watch time because they now have. So here's the thing, and I'm only equating this video because it's the exact same concept, but having that open loop will literally increase watch time because it creates curiosity and progress, which is having video progress is the best way to get them to continue watching. And it lets them know things are happening, things are moving. I'm going to learn more information down this road. There's purpose here. And so it makes them know that you're almost intentional. I think intentions, the underlying feeling that goes with this is like, I'm intentionally going to tell you this later because there's something that's going to support this concept, which you need to know first. You need to have this base before learning it.
And actually, I just took a quick note there because I just added a 17th copy hack that I'm going to talk about now because you took a good point. And that is telling stories. If you ever go see a speaker talk, most speakers will open telling a story and it instantly captures your attention. And that's kind of a really good context. It's like, I'm going to tell you this one thing, and a lot of times I'll open a loop and then tell a story. And I'll say, but first let me tell you my story. Because then instantly, if you're telling a story and it's engaging, people just instantly throw themselves into your story. They try and figure out how they relate to your story. And, stories are just way more engaging. Like I could say to you, like I could say something like, I could just go and tell you like some content, or I could be like, tell it through a story. You know what I mean? Like instead of being like with some of these principles, I could be like, here's the story of how I learned this. And it'd probably be more engaging than just talking about the one thing, even though it'd be long and convoluted and maybe not as relevant. So stories are really powerful. And oftentimes, like I said in ads, I'll open a loop and then I'll go, before I do, just let me tell you about my story. And then I'll tell all these things, all these like emotionally engaging things about their story. And then I'll get back to the loop. But in that time, someone fully understands who you are, what you've done, what your experience is, how you can probably help them. And then you give them the value as well. So it closes all these loops. And then you make an offer. So you're right. Yeah. Having that context for like how the loop fits into the story is really powerful.
Awesome. Well, let's keep going, man. I know you got a lot left.
Yeah, got a lot to do. So I can punch through a few of these, but the fifth one is this is the one word you should never use in copy. Now, never is a strong word. I feel like another thing I feel with copy is when you learn a lot of these principles, you will go and sort of take it to the hill. Oh, I'm going to do this like to the 100% level. And then you'll realize you need to bring it back a bit. You know what I mean? And this is a good example. And the one word you should never use is the word that. It's what I call a thatectomy. It's like a vasectomy for the word that. You should take that out of your copy, because if you look at most contexts where you use that word, funnily enough, that word, it doesn't need to be used. And when someone first pointed this out to me, I was like, that's crazy. But like, then I went and looked at all these like sentence structures that I'll look at, and I realized I was like, shit, like they're right. You know what I mean? Like you don't really need it in, again, that's why I don't say never. Because sometimes you do need it as like a word that sets it up. But yeah, when someone first told me, this was a mentor I had, there's a name for the word, type of word that is. I don't know what I've searched on Google trying to find like what type of word is that, but then it gives me like weird things about the word that. But it's a type of word where like when you speak it, you like breathe out and like intonate on the word funnily, and it causes like a pause in the mind of your reader. So if you get rid of the word, you'll find things are smoother. And now I should have a good example of this off the top of my head. The thing is, everything I have has gotten rid of that word. I need to find a good example here. I can't think of one off the top of my head. But taking the word out just makes things smoother. You might, like for example, it might be like, here's the thing that you need to know. Here's the thing you need to know. If you take the word that out, it makes no difference. It just makes your copy shorter. Here's the thing that you need to know. Here's the thing you need to know. That's just one example I can think of off the top of my head. But for anyone watching, go and look at your copy. Go and just Google up a random news article and Control F, find the word that, and you'll see you can pretty much take it out of the sentence in 70 to 80% of instances, and things are heaps smoother. It's a really interesting word. The English language is pretty fascinating in that sense, but you can get rid of the word that and things just become a lot more powerful and clean and crisp. So that's the one word I say to most people. Like when I'm editing copy, I'll just go through and just delete it from a lot of stuff, and then only leave it if you need it there. You can use the word which instead of that, but again, it's not. It's a similar kind of word. So this is like a more finessed kind of point about your copy, but taking out the word that makes things a lot smoother and easier to read.
That was amazing. Sweet, dude. That's a really good tip.
Yeah, and one of the other tips, which is actually point 16 I've got on my list, but I'll talk about now, is pauses. And we were talking about pauses before, but I don't mean the sort of pause that makes things better. People will use words and do and say things that create pauses in their copy. So when someone's reading through like your sales page or your VSL or whatever, copywriters have this thing that we call the buyer's trance. And it's when you get someone like totally consumed by the thing they're like reading or the video they're watching, they're in like a trance almost. And it's a weird kind of thing because I'm not talking about hypnosis or doing anything hypnotic to someone, but you can relate. Like next time you go to read something or read a sales letter, you'll be cruising through it. And if it's engaging, you'll just be reading it. And you don't even realize like you're kind of you're oblivious to the world going on around you in a lot of ways. And until someone does something that creates a pause. So, one thing some people do is they'll use the same word 2 or 3 times in a sentence or in above and below like adjoining lines in a sentence, in a paragraph, sorry. And doing that sort of stuff in your mind, it's like, oh, hang on, I just saw that word, or you see it a few different times, and it can kind of interrupt your concentration and take you out of that trance. So it's creating pauses. So you need to make sure when you read it, the word that can create pauses, and even sentences that are poorly structured. If you write things that are like complicated or convoluted or whatever, they're just not smooth and clear, someone's reading through it quickly, it can take them out of their sort of buyer's trance. And they're like, oh, hang on, they just get confused. And then they've got to stop and read up. They get out of that zone they're in where they're just watching the video intently because they might miss something or you said something in a confusing way. So that sort of takes them out of their state, and they go back up and read again the next 3 lines, and losing their focus at any point in time can get someone off a page. So again, this one's a bit more broader, whereas like taking the word that out is more specific, but be aware of where you're creating pauses by things that aren't said clearly. Am I overusing the same word too much? Am I using the same adjective? Like a lot of people use words like incredible and amazing too many times. You just need to use a thesaurus and get a bit more breadth of your like adjectives so things are, smoother. But that's, avoiding pauses is a big one so that people can stay totally consumed in your ad or your copy.
Yeah, so knowing when and when not to use pauses, my question for you is, do you use punctuation in a way to create pauses ever?
Yeah, sometimes you can. Like I'll use the ellipsis, like the 3 full stops a bit. I'll use colons if I want to like make a point. And yeah, you do need to use commas. But it's funny the order we're going through in here. The next point I was going to make is write in short sentences. And this is a really, really powerful one, right? So instead of saying, like, I went and did this, I went down the street and I got a coffee, and then I went and saw a movie, and then I went to the casino. They're just things that are near my house. You'd say something like, I went down the street, full stop. I went and got a coffee, then I went to the casino. And it creates like a rhythm. Not only is it short and easy to digest in the mind of the reader, but it creates a rhythm. It's like, yeah, today I'm going to play footy, then I'm going to see my friend. After that, I'm doing this. Instead of being like, I'm going to the footy and then I'm going to see a friend and then after that I'm doing this. Because you think about, if you ever read a sentence that's like 3 lines long on your screen, until you see that full stop, you're like, okay, he did this. And then, like, you've got to remember everything in the sentence because you know it all relates to each other. Whereas every single full stop you put in gives me like, it takes the tension away. You know what I mean? It's like it takes the pressure off me. It's like, okay, cool. That happened and then that. Remember what the sentence said, but I don't need to carry every word I've read for 3 lines to make sense of that whole section. So it's all about, again, not creating a pause, doing things that make it simple and easy for the reader or the viewer, if it's a video script, to stay engaged in what you're talking about. Because I feel like in a lot of ways, copy is about reducing your mistakes more so than enhancing your strengths. Because if you can take out all of these things that create issues, it's about like reducing the distractions and minimizing the things that take people off your page. Once you can do that effectively, you can, get people staying, get them more engaged, get them in flow with what you're doing, and, taking action. So writing in short sentences. I remember when someone pointed that out to me, I was like, wow, that's really powerful because it creates rhythm in your writing. I play the guitar. I also play the drums. But the thing is, this afternoon I'm going to see a movie as opposed to trying to say them all in one sentence, which can be long and convoluted and take up a lot of like mental RAM, if you will.
Great tip, man.
That's that. So we're getting through them, guys. There's 17. That's must be 7th. I touched on this before. I didn't realize it was in here. The 8th grade thing. The average person reads at an 8th grade level. So again, make sure your stuff's simplified. A really good tool for that is it's called the FK scale, Flesch Kincaid scale. Microsoft Word has it built in. You can actually go into like, I think it's format or language, whatever. I don't use a Mac, so I wouldn't know, and I don't actually check this stuff anymore because I just sort of know how to write my own stuff. But you can get a rating. Google it, the Flesch Kincaid scale. If you look at that, it'll show you like how it gives you a rating. I think the numbers go from like 5 to 14, 0 to 10. I don't even know, but it'll give you a rating based on how advanced your writing is. And so taking out that, using that Flesch Kincaid scale, you can say, okay, someone at an 8th grade level, they have this sort of rating. Is my copy above or below that? If not, why? And how can I change it? So that's a tool you can use to make sure your thing's at an 8th grade level. And yeah, that's a really powerful resource. While you're getting used to writing at that simplified level, then over time you'll understand what you need to say and what does and doesn't work. So the next tip I have, which on my list is point 8, but it's probably like the 11th or 12th one. Everyone, it comes back to that fast, quick, and easy thing, but everyone wants to discover, or everyone in some way believes that they are, that people we don't want to learn things, because the word learn throws you back to school, and it's not fast, quick, and easy. It's a process. You had to go to school for 12 or 13 years plus university or college or postgraduate, whatever you did. We don't want to learn things like learn how to make money. Instead of using the word learn, use the word discover, because it's like discover implies that the answer you've been looking for was there all along, but you just didn't know. You just didn't know about it. It's like just discover this method that will help you make money or help you lose weight or help you find your dream partner. It's like you've always been able to do this. You just haven't been privy to the information that now I'm going to reveal. As opposed to being like, learn how you can meet your dream partner, learn how you can make money online. The word discover comes back to that fast, quick, and easy principle that just implies that things are a lot easier to manage, easier to do, already done for you in some ways. So yeah, that is my advice there. Use the word discover instead of using the word learn. Really powerful concept. I went through the perhaps versus maybe thing earlier on. Again, instead of suggesting to people that like you are this way, you have this problem, you're in this predicament, it's like maybe you are this way. Perhaps you have this problem, potentially you're in this predicament. Using words like that, they just more softly suggest that someone could have these problems, as opposed to saying you have this problem you need to fix, which is just too forceful and too intimidating, or too intense for some people who are like, oh, this is just another bullshit ad. They don't actually understand me. Who are you to say that you know who I am? I'm not in that predicament. So it's more about just being intelligent with the language you use as opposed to forcing things onto people. That's a really big one. And again, the next point is what I call so you can /to. And this comes back to shorter sentences. So, going through the college and university and school system, we have all these assignments and projects that have to be a certain word count. So in a way that sort of inhibits our ability to write copy, we're taught how to extend word counts and say all these things that, fluff along and add all this bullshit into our writing just to make things longer for the sake of being longer. So what I call this principle is, where can you shorten things? So in this case, the phrase "so you can," like, learn my 3-step Facebook ad formula so you can generate X result. Just use the word "to." Take 3 syllables into one. Use my 3-step Facebook ad formula to generate this result. Instantly you've taken out 2 syllables you don't need. And again, it's just making things shorter, swifter, cleaner, smoother. And those things really make a big impact. So yeah, really be aware of that. Another one is like the word "always." You can use that instead of like, like we do it all the time, we do it always. Wherever you can shorten and take syllables out, it just makes things smoother. It reduces pauses. It increases the flow of your ads and copy. Always look for phrases that you're using that you can just substitute with one word. So that's something that I'll always try and implement. Okay, we're getting there now. The power of 3. That's a technique I call where any joke we tell, right, there's always like 3 things. You've got like, the Irishman, the Englishman, the Australian, or whatever. There'll always be like the third thing is always the punchline. Not sure why that is, but it's a powerful thing to keep in mind for your copy. Whenever you're listing out benefits, especially if it's in the same sentence, always list 3. It's just the rhythmically how we've been conditioned. Like I'm running a webinar in a few days, and the headline is 24 sales copy secrets to write high converting ads, triple your sales, and destroy your competition. It has that flow of 3, or what I call the power of 3. And you think these things are small, but instead, if you said 2 things like 24 sales copy secrets to write high converting ads and triple your sales, it's not bad. It just doesn't have that same rolling flow that the power of 3 creates. So I use this throughout my copy for when I'm talking benefits, features, whatever it is that I might be talking about, to create that kind of effortless flow in my ads, which can be really, really powerful. And that brings us to the last 2 points. And these ones are really sort of big psychological principles. So when you're like writing an ad and you're detailing out someone's problems or how they feel, or whatever it may be, you want to talk about how it's not their fault. Now, whilst we know that, if we come from cause and we take responsibility, that that's not the reality, everyone believes on some deep psychological level that the reason they're in the position they're in is not their fault. And what I mean by that is, we know that we get out what we put in. The results we have are just a symptom of the actions we take. But there are things genuinely that are out of our control. The family you're born into, the country you're born in, whether you're born into wealth or not. There are some mitigating circumstances. If you have disease, all this kind of thing, there are situations that we can't control. If your parents leave you, or if your parents beat you up, or whatever. But obviously you can't control them, but you can then control the outcome of that by what action you take. But people want to believe that the reason they're out of shape, or the reason they're unhealthy, the reason they don't have any money, they're broke, whatever, they want to believe it's someone else's fault. Mum, their dad, society, university, the government, everyone blames Trump or whatever it is. People want to believe these things because it makes them feel better about themselves, that it's not their fault where they are right now. So I'll often say, if you're in this predicament, the good news is it's not your fault, because, someone's lied to you. Every great brand has an enemy. You know what I mean? For Apple, it was like, we reject the status quo. You know what I mean? We're the round pegs in the square hole, or whatever Steve Jobs' expression was. Every great business has an enemy. Online retailers, their enemy is brick and mortar. Education upstarts that teach entrepreneurs, their enemy, like the entrepreneurs are like, their enemy might be, traditional education. I don't know. You know what I mean? So everyone has that enemy. And it's like saying, it's not your fault that you're in this position. Rich people have kept secrets from you that are the reasons you're not wealthy. You know what I mean? So that's really powerful, because people are like, oh, yeah, it's not my fault. I just didn't know that yet. I hadn't discovered that thing yet. It's been held from me. So being able to say to someone it's not your fault, super powerful. And that kind of weighs into my next point, which is mysticism. People buy into massively. The reason conspiracy theories are so big is because society and psychology, I'm not sure why it is, but we buy into the fact that there's secrets that have been hidden from us. there's people tell lies and myths and, the harsh truth about why something does or doesn't work. There's been really successful launches lately, the truth about cancer, the truth about vaccine, and all these mystical things like, again, secrets, myths, lies. If you pick up the best copywriting education you can get is to pick up like a gossip magazine. I love being in North America. I buy the National Enquirer everywhere I go. Their headlines, the cover, the stuff they talk about is so juicy, but it's always the same stuff. I've got like this section in my phone, photos of like covers from the National Enquirer. And I remember the last one was like something about like the shocking conspiracy behind Prince's death. And it was all these juicy like words that I think is crazy because it's all bullshit. But it's funny because that's the stuff people buy into. Like the rich people have kept secrets from you. That's why you're not wealthy. This bodybuilder or this fitness model on Instagram has this secret revolutionary way to lose weight. She just hasn't told you, and that's the reason you're overweight. It sounds crazy, all that kind of stuff, but we buy into lies, we buy into hype, we buy into all of those things like, 9/11 was an inside job, or there's a secret thing the government's not telling us. And it sounds crazy. It sounds like total bullshit, but people buy into it, that there's secrets they don't know that are holding them back from getting where they are. It's like a fundamental psychological principle that you can utilize. So I always use the word secret in my copy.
Yeah, but I mean, look at Russell's.com secrets, right? Classic.
The underground playbook for millionaires or whatever it is, been doing, and like the whole, you go on that landing page and it's all like in this black room and he's got this big whiteboard where he's putting stuff up. Great example of it. And even the vibe of it, the cover's black. It's got this like secret kind of vibe to it.
Yeah, and I think that the preface is written by Dan Kennedy, one of the best copywriters of all time. And he kind of breaks down like why they went with all of the marketing around .com secrets. And he kind of like tackles that objection of friends. Like, in fact, there really isn't any secrets. These are all things that we're going to teach you and are actually like very actionable marketing tactics. So Russell's not this shady secret guy. They talk about that in the beginning, in the preface of .com secrets.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, Brunson just bought the domain Marketing Secrets, so that's kind of like congruent with his brand. But yeah, it all comes back to this concept that, and it comes back to that same psychological principle around like why we want to discover things and not learn them, because there's secrets and lies people have told us about success and money and weight loss and dating and carpet cleaning, whatever your market is. So those like things are really, really powerful. And then that takes me to my final principle, which is, so you've got, it's not your fault. Another really powerful thing to say is you're not alone. Because if you've ever been, someone never experienced mental health problems, anxiety, stress, depression, or, you've been broke or you've been in a really hopeless situation, for someone to tell you like, you're not alone, there's other people that are going through what you're going through. Again, it's really powerful because you're like, oh, there's a community of people that can help you make money or, lose weight. I always use those two examples, but you're not alone can be really powerful, especially as you intertwine that to tell some stories. So that's another like key principle to keep in mind.
Dude, what an amazing masterclass. Like, I feel like if everybody is here, everybody would be like standing up and applauding right now, because I kind of want to right now too. But seriously, you really over-delivered on this one, dude. That was all great trips. I learned a ton. So thank you for elevating my game in copyright.
I was looking at the time there at one point. I'm like, I'm going to have to get through a few of these because I'm talking about this stuff all day. But it's really interesting stuff. And, implementing that sort of stuff, you'll see some pretty dramatic increases.
Dude, absolutely. So how can the EA community continue to reach out to you or find you or, be in contact?
Yeah, awesome, man. So I do all my stuff through Facebook. My website's very, very ordinary just because I don't need one, which is not, I should have one, but I don't. So it's just facebook.com/james.hepburn, like Audrey Hepburn, HEPBURN.182. Add me on Facebook. I post a lot of video content there. Or on Instagram, it's just jhepburn17. They're the best places to find me, man. And as I said to you earlier, I'm running a webinar tomorrow, which will obviously be before this comes out. And it covers 24 of my sales copy hacks. I go in depth, very similar stuff to what we talked about, but those additional 8 are super valuable. I talk about some words I use, I talk a lot more about emotional density and how we really need to crank up emotions and what emotions we react to, because that stuff's important. And yeah, I wasn't going to record that, but basically just from having done this, I'll record it. And if anyone wants a copy of it, just shoot me a message and I'll send it to you. But yeah, man, just reach out. Like to connect. I'm in EA, so.
Are you going to have a replay page of that, or maybe like another viewing? Because what I could do is just link that below this video.
Yeah, I might create one. I wasn't going to, but I'll create one after the webinar tomorrow, and I'll send you a link so you've got that. And yeah, man, we can add that in. That'll be awesome. But yeah, like I said, if anyone wants to reach out, I'm in the group. Tag me, whatever. Ask me questions. I love connecting and meeting people, man. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Well, this was another amazing masterclass here with the Entrepreneur Alliance. We'll see you next week, okay?